There's an old poem. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
Welcome to What Makes It Scary, a seasonal podcast unleashing the fear behind your favorite and not-so-favorite horror movies. I'm your host, Jody Henderson of Clever Girl Effects Studios, and with me, as always, Alex Vincent of Mr. Red Productions.
Hi, I'm a regular man, and I'm not... Uh-oh, something weird's happening. Now I'm a wolf, but I can still talk like a dude. Isn't that weird? I don't know how that works.
That seemed not very painful at all for you.
It was for a second, and then I got over it. Hi, how are you?
Hi. Well, this is almost like part 2.
It really is.
Of vampires, because we left it on a cliffhanger, and that's why everybody's back here listening today.
That's why,
the important question is...
Right. What's the important question?
The important question is, Alex and Jody, are they Team Edward or are they Team Jacob?
Right, but why would that be a factor?
Because today we're talking about werewolves.
Werewolves, in fact.
Which is the counterpart of... vampires.
A lot of crossover. The Venn diagram, very similar. There's lots of bitey transference of things, lots of nighttime energy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you answer the question first?
Well, I think mine's going to be obvious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am absolutely 100% Team Edward.
Okay, yeah.
Yours always surprises me.
Yeah, I'm a Team Jacob
yes,
guy. I'm a Team
isn't
Jacob.
that... bizarre.
I feel like, and I have not revisited this franchise in many years, but I feel like in terms of treatment of the main character, Bella, Edward sucks in a lot of ways. And Jacob's not perfect, but he at least seems to care about her more than Edward does. Plus, I just have never been a Robert Pattinson fan.
Yeah.
He just always looks sick. And I know,
you want to talk about looks?
Okay, all right, yeah. Let's talk about looks. Hit me, do it.
You like an alpaca.
You think he looks like he has an alpaca face?
Yes, Jacob has an alpaca face.
That's ridiculous.
Nothing against Taylor Lautner.
Yeah, Taylor Lautner
as a person.
Mm-hmm.
But your face, it's like an alpaca.
Only one of those actors was in
Harry Potter, yes.
Valentine's Day, the best movie of all.
Okay.
I can't remember who directed that movie, but that guy's Valentine's Day, greatest movie. Robert Pattinson was not in it, so I think the point stands.
Anyway, this was one of always our earliest discussions when we first started dating, and it almost ended with us breaking up because you're wrong.
Well, when did Twilight come out? It was like 2008 or 9?
Oh, yeah, something like that.
So the conversation was already stale by the time we started dating, and yet we were still adamant.
We're still on it.
Yeah.
So well, that's it. Well, let's close the door on that.
Yeah.
Let's get into
We really don't need to get too long on Twilight.
Let's get into werewolves.
Werewolves. We talked about vampires last time, obviously. And when we started that episode, when we started researching it, I was not super excited. But then once we got into it, I was like, wow, this is, exploring film history in a way, and it's doing all this stuff. And I got more into it. This was almost the opposite.
Oh, no!
not in a too extreme way, but when we were first getting started, I was like, oh, this will be cool. And a lot of the movies are very cool, but there's not a lot of classic cinema here. There's a
really
couple movies that are like, okay, this is important in some way, but there aren't like movies that people would go on to put on their greatest movies of all time list. The way that like Nosferatu, while not like a great movie by conventional standards, is definitely a classic, and Dracula is a classic, and this movie doesn't have that as strongly, but I still enjoyed it a lot. These movies a lot of them were really, really good.
They were
a lot of fun to watch. Yeah,
a lot of fun to watch.
Let's talk about them because that's what we do here.
Do you have any, you don't have any pull to werewolves of any kind from your childhood?
It's interesting. I think I don't know that I ever liked werewolves. The way that, like, when you're a kid, vampires are cool, and werewolves are just they're almost generic, because wolves are just like a beast, right? That's just the generic. If you think about a monster out in the woods, it's not like some inhuman, monstrous thing, but like a creature it's kind of just wolf shape. It's
Yeah.
4 legs, long snout, fangs, and that's just what a wolf is. And werewolves, you can do interesting stuff with them, but the idea when you're a kid is it's just like a dude who like can turn into just a generic wolf creature, and that's not really that compelling to a kid. Do you feel differently?
The werewolf
Uh-huh.
is part of the Universal
That's
Cinematic
true. Yeah.
Monster Squad,
Right.
basically.
And who doesn't love that?
I seriously, they're iconic.
Yeah.
I love those. Like Dracula's medallion is as much like part of it.
Sure.
For me, just the werewolf itself is like, of course, that's one of the classic movie monsters, and so I like that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
I had never seen a werewolf movie, any of them, besides I guess Twilight. But
right. That's
so
hardly
these
a werewolf
were
movie.
all very exciting to watch.
Yes, these were very interesting. A lot of them I'd heard about, but had never seen.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to get into them. So, what about you? Do you like werewolves? Is that your answer? Just that they're part of that squad and so you like them?
Yeah, just that they're part of it.
I like them now, I'd say. I think that they're interesting, but it's weird. We'll get into the specifics when we talk about the movies.
Right.
But
we watched 4 movies.
we did. Did we watch 4? Did we watch 5? We watched
5.
movies.
Yeah. I guess if you want to put that in there. Do you want to start at the beginning?
Yeah, the first movie we watched is one of the first werewolf movies. It's a classic. It's The Wolfman.
1941.
41. So this was a couple years after Dracula, but before the 80s,
Right.
which is when
werewolves
stuff
really took off.
Yeah. There's seriously a huge wave of werewolf stuff in the 80s, but we're not there yet.
So The Wolfman.
Yeah.
Classic. This movie set all of the rules
Right.
for werewolves.
This movie is the book Dracula to vampires because a
Absolutely.
lot of establishing stuff about how werewolves work were kind of set up in this movie.
We have our main character, Lon Chaney Jr.
Yes.
Plays the Wolfman.
Lon Chaney, as in Phantom of the Opera's son.
Right.
Right.
And he is...
He's just this dude. He's this... So the movies in the 40s had these character types, which are just kind of like, they're vaguely rich, they're vaguely upper class.
Yeah, and we never know why.
We never know why. We have no idea what this guy does. His father owns a castle or something.
And he's just an heir to it.
Yeah, so I would call these people just socialites. They just kind of like go around, they like introduce themselves and smile at people and flirt. The Birds is like this. It's just like this generic class of like older people. They're like mid-30s, generic mid-30s, and they're just like, well, I'm going to be charming and smile at you, and you don't know what my deal is, and I'm going to behave predatorially, but that's going to be seen as
that's
cute.
My deal.
Yeah, that's my thing. And this guy does that. He's like looking through a telescope. He sees this woman.
Yeah, he's coming back home.
Right.
Because he's inheriting this castle. But yes, he goes to this antique store.
Yeah. And the woman who owns it is the one that he saw through the window.
The night before had seen her, was like she was taking off earrings and whatever, and already you're like you said, it's like predatory. You're just like, oh, I don't like this.
I don't like what's going on here.
So then he walks in, and then it just gets worse from there.
He's like wearing it on his sleeve. He's like,
do you have this specific pair of earrings? And she's like, oh, I don't really have anything like that for sale. And he's like, well, I know you have them because I saw them.
What about
your
upstairs
windows.
in your room in your little chest? And she's just like, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, I just look at beautiful women and I know about them. And instantly, like, modern day women would be like, red flags, sirens going off.
We don't get predator, back away.
This is a problem. But she's just like, oh, okay.
I just think women had to deal with more shit back then.
So.
And then men just, like, did this all day long. So she's like, whatever.
Right. But he is charming. He's good at like talking to her. By the standards of this movie, sure. She's into him. They kind of like start this thing. She's like resistant. She's not super into him, but she's like,
because she's engaged to someone else.
She is engaged. And they start to, I can't remember how this comes up, but they start to get into this werewolf.
Well, he buys a cane that has a werewolf on it, and it also has a
pentagram.
A pentagram.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's a wolf head. It's a silver tipped cane, so the wolf head is made of silver. And they start to get into
and he's like, well, why's the star on it? And she tells the poem of
right. She tells this poem. I think I wrote this down. Let me look to see if So even a man who's pure of heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. If you didn't catch that, don't worry.
They say it 3 more times.
Yeah, they say it a bunch of times. So she knows a lot about werewolves.
And he's like, oh, what are you, like Little Red Riding Hood? And she's like, actually, Little Red Riding Hood is a werewolf movie.
Story. Yeah.
Or story. A movie.
Eventually. Yeah, because it's I don't think she gets too into it, but I guess the idea is it's a wolf who is man-like. He has intelligence and can talk and everything.
Right. So then these fortune tellers come into town, one of them being
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Although it might be pronounced Bela Lugosi because this character's name is Bela, and everybody refers to him as Bela.
Yeah.
This was funny to see.
It was just like, oh, and then you're like, are you going to be a vampire?
Right.
Or
clearly,
no? Okay.
He's like established in the horror world, and so this was a get for them to have him in this movie. Mm-hmm. It was very strange. There's a lot of actually big names in this movie because Lon Chaney, obviously his father was established, but in the movie, his character's father is played by Claude Rains, a.k.a. the Invisible Man.
Yeah,
like the original.
We're all crossing all types of streams here.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So our main character and the lady that he's now picked up at the antiques shop, she has a friend, and they all go to the fortune teller to have their fortunes told.
Right.
And as Bela Lugosi is looking at the friend's hand, the pentagram
I want to say her name is
up.
Jenny.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So it definitely starts with a J. The pentagram shows up on her hand, and he knows instantly, like, oh, you are marked. Like,
yes, because
for the werewolf.
Yeah, this is the mark of the beast. Because the shopkeeper had said, I can't remember her name, but she had actually mentioned this. He says the werewolf will see the pentagram on his next victim, which is super weird to think about. Does this mean that the werewolf intends to target these people and so sees this, or are they drawn to kill this person?
I think they're drawn to it.
So then, this implies there's some higher force that's putting this here.
Maybe.
The movie obviously doesn't go into this, so it doesn't
doesn't
matter, but it's just weird to think about.
She runs off because Bela Lugosi is freaked out.
And he tells her basically, like, I can't help you, get out, which is not what you want to hear from a fortune teller.
Not at all. So she's running through the woods and gets attacked by a wolf.
A wolf. She gets got.
And then our main character comes, Larry is his name, and he goes to save her and beats this wolf with his new cane, thankfully that he bought.
Right.
And he gets bit in the process.
Right. He gets bit on his chest.
Which we were trying to watch and never really saw.
You could get scratched on your chest. It's hard to see how something with a snout could bite a chest, but I don't know.
So they basically wake up the next day. Jenny or Judy or whatever her name is, she's dead.
Yeah.
And then next to her is this man who was beaten over the head.
Right.
And it's presumed that, he was a lunatic that, attacked her.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff. And then I think they find the cane. The cane is lost there, too. So they're like, oh, well, Larry just bought this cane. So did he beat this guy up and kill him? Right. So, now they're all like, oh, Larry's, suspicious.
Yeah, it looks bad. How do you explain this?
Right.
That was the fortune teller, though. The body they found.
Yes.
It was
Bela.
It
ends up being,
Right. I didn't remember if that was revealed.
But he turns back into a human.
So they don't find a wolf, but he's adamant that he was attacked by a wolf. And he's like, look, I can show you the bite that I have on my chest. Still doesn't make sense. It's gone. He was healed overnight, so obviously there's even more suspicion. He wasn't attacked. I think he was the only one who saw it. The shopkeeper that he was flirting with, I don't think she saw the wolf, so it was just his word. And it's just a weird story, to be sure.
Yes, and so the other fortune teller kind of finds Larry and is like, wear this pendant around your neck and it will protect you. Mm-hmm. He, of course, is like, well, I'm not going to wear it. I'm going to put it on my hopefully new girlfriend.
Right, to protect her. it's such a brazen, just like...
like, oh, okay.
It's like he kind of believes her, but doesn't really take it that seriously.
Right.
It's
Meanwhile,
weird.
he's kind of doing all this research into lycanthropy, which is werewolfism, which is kind of linked to schizophrenia in a way.
Right.
Because you're having these like multiple personalities and dual personalities that are fighting one another.
And there is like legitimate clinical lycanthropy, which existed long before this movie, the idea that people thought they were becoming werewolves, and this has been studied. So this idea had already existed, so the movie is playing off of that, the idea that like, we don't believe that people are actually turning into wolves by like physically, but there is like this thing.
It's kind of like that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. It all plays kind of on the multiple personalities and the beasts within all of us.
The duality,
Right. So, of course, the full moon comes.
Yep.
He turns into the wolf man.
He does, the wolf man.
And these are such iconic shots. Him transforming, the transition, just more hair. And he never really gets wolf
Yeah, he's very, very
form.
human.
He's just like a very hairy guy with fangs.
That's true. The guy who did the makeup for this is named Jack Pierce, the makeup artist, and he had actually done a movie before this called Werewolf of London, where he had tried to make like this type of character, but the actor Henry Hull, who played this werewolf, was unwilling to spend long hours being made up in makeup, and so that he could only do like so much. So this movie was kind of him getting to like really flex and do what he wanted to do.
This, and then he starts going through the woods.
Yep,
to
through woods,
find somebody to kill.
Yep. That's what you do as a werewolf.
This footage is so iconic and is seen in tons of other movies.
Absolutely.
I remember first seeing it watching Beethoven.
The
very first Beethoven. Like the dog like sneaks into the house in the middle of the night and like clicks the TV on and is like watching the Wolfman and
That's
George.
Really funny.
George is like walking around the house and he's like, well, why is the TV on? Because the dog like jumps down and hides and whatever. It's quite funny.
That is good. This movie.
So that was it was fun to see that like actually watching
in
the
context.
footage. Yeah.
Right. This movie must be in public domain because it
has to be.
It shows up in a lot of movies, just like The Thing from Another World or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and I think It's a Wonderful Life is also public. It's like you could just show it on TV.
Yeah. He gets caught in a bear trap.
He does.
Which you're not leaving from that.
Right. This happens so much in a lot of these movies. Somebody gets in a bear trap and they're like, let me out. And it's like, no there's no letting out.
Yeah, you don't have a leg anymore.
Right. Your bones are like dust.
There's a reason those things are illegal.
Yeah.
Like
straight up. This is the problem. But it's treated as just like this, ow,
yeah,
that's
he like
inconvenient.
gets his leg out of it and he's like, ouch.
Right.
No, you would be like writhing and all this other stuff.
Highly unrealistic. So, yeah, so we haven't really talked about his father character, but at one point he gives the silver cane to his father because they know that silver kills a werewolf. This is established as part of the rules, and he knows that he's the werewolf. So he gives the cane to his father and says, "If I'm going to try to run away, if anything does happen, I need you to just stop me," essentially. And his father doesn't believe him, but once out in the woods, he gets attacked by a wolf, which is him, and he clubs it to death. That it's his own son that he ends up killing. And then of course he turns back into a man, and they're all sad about it. His girlfriend there, whose name is Gwen, by the way.
Oh yes, I should have remembered that because I love the name Gwen.
You do. And everybody's sad about it. This movie, we've talked about abrupt endings before, zombies, vampires. These movies are almost like the quintessential abrupt endings. One of the movies we talk about, it's almost just like, and snap, and the movie just suddenly ends.
And we're done.
Right. This movie just ends. Like, he dies, and then everyone's sad about it. Credits roll. Okay, cool.
We jump 40 years later. And we get not one, but two werewolf movies.
When It Rains, It Pours.
In 1981.
This 1-2 punch of classic movies, I think, is what starts the 80s craze of not just werewolf movies, but kind of just effects movies.
Yes, these were the jumping off points for effects makeup is now getting awarded and all these other things. So
which
people
makes
are
sense.
really trying to push the boundaries with it.
For sure. Which one do we want to talk about first?
Let's talk about The Howling first, because that one came out
Earlier in the year.
Earlier.
Yeah, I think it came out in March or something.
I mean, basically they were filmed at the same time, so it's not like one took inspiration from the other.
Right.
But let's talk about The Howling.
The Howling, yeah. So, to start things off, I enjoyed this movie a lot.
I did not.
Yeah, you had some problems with it, and I had some problems with it too. It gets pretty slow towards the end.
Yeah, it's got Dee Wallace in it, which is always a delight to watch.
She's so good.
She's done other works. I mean, she's in E.T., she's in Cujo.
She's in Cujo, yep.
A bunch of other things, but her and her husband, I'm not sure of her husband's name, like in real life.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're married, and they both star in this movie and in Cujo. And in Cujo, they play like this couple, but she's married to somebody else.
Right, she's having an affair with him, but that's her real life husband. It's quite funny.
It is good. This movie, they actually play a married couple.
Right, and it starts out by Dee Wallace's character. She's like on a stakeout. She's a anchor for the evening news.
Yeah.
But she's been getting these calls from this guy named Eddie.
Eddie, yeah.
And he's presumed to be like one of these like serial killers. And so of course the news media, like she kind of tells her boss about it, like, hey, I've been getting these calls from like this guy named Eddie.
Right.
And he's like pursuing me and that type of thing. And so they're like, okay, let's set you up on a secret stakeout.
Right.
And we'll get him.
You'll wear a wire. We're going to have this. It's so slapped together, though. They don't do a good job.
No, or even explaining it, really.
Yeah, it really jumps you in the middle of this. But they don't have people watching her. They have people listening.
Like the cops know that this is happening, but
yeah. And so they're like, if anything goes wrong, we'll hear it over the thing, and then we'll find out where she is, essentially, based on the audio, and go get her. And then there's interference, the audio cuts out, and so the police have to be like, we have to go around
like,
knocking on doors.
She's wearing purple.
Right,
and that's all we know. Yeah.
Why would you not have somebody in a van in binoculars? It's so dumb.
Anyway, she goes into this like sex shop.
It's like a porn cinema.
Yeah, and goes into one of the VIP like booths, and Eddie is in there.
Right.
And you can't see him. She sits down. The movie starts playing. It's a movie that he's made.
Yeah.
Of like.
It's porn.
Yeah, but it's like killing and raping this woman almost.
Oh yeah, it's not good.
So
porn.
He's standing behind her and won't let her turn around and look at him, and she finally does. We can't see it as an audience, but she
freaks out,
starts freaking out, screaming. The cops show up just in the nick of time and shoot the guy, and he's dead.
He's dead. And that's the intro to this movie.
Right. Now she can't even go back to work. She can't, she can't function really. She's scared out of her wits, but she can't really remember anything.
she's amnesiaing this.
Which is very common for people who suffer like traumatic things.
Right. And her husband is trying to help her out. Christopher Stone is the actor, by the way.
Okay.
But they don't know what to do, so they end up, she goes to this psychiatrist, this doctor who, it's a weird idea, but it's the conceit of the movie, and so you just kind of have to go with it. But he casually is just like, hey, I have a cabin up north. Why don't you join me? And there's a bunch of people there, and it'll just kind of be like this relaxation thing. And this is like in this wave of like new age philosophy.
Yeah, the California self-help.
Yeah, self-help movement. So this was very of the time. I think that's part of what makes it feel a little dated now. Is like this isn't. We still have stuff like this. We have
mental health, but, the movie isn't using these buzzwords. It's just kind of implied that this is what we're kind of doing.
Yeah. So she and her husband do this, which I don't buy that they would. It seems like this just feels like a huge conceit for me.
She's doing kind of therapy while she's there, so it's anything to really help her.
That's true.
Get through it, and to just be away from everybody, because everywhere she goes, she's like, oh my gosh, you're the anchor from blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So she doesn't want to be known right now while she's trying to deal with all this stuff.
For sure. So yeah, they end up meeting a lot of
freaky people.
Yeah, these people are weird. There's one lady is described as a nymphomaniac. She is all about sex.
Basically Elvira.
She's very Elvira-like. There's this old dude who I think he's suicidal or something. There's a lot of characters.
And they're all kind of the same family. We later find out that they're all part of the same family.
Right. But yeah, he's ostensibly treating all these people. And so they settle in. The nymphomaniac is kind of putting the hits on the husband character who's like, I obviously don't want this. I'm married. But this stuff starts going down, these weird howling the howling.
Yeah.
Are going on.
Out in the woods, and everyone's like, oh, what is this? And all,
Right. I believe the husband is like coming home and gets attacked by a wolf. Is that?
Yes.
Am I remembering that right?
Yes, I believe so.
So at first he's just like, all right, at least I'm okay. He goes back home. But then he like, one night he like sneaks out.
He's like in a trance and like finds, believe her name is Marsha. Elvira lady. And
they do it. They start boning down by a campfire outside. And as they're doing that, they're transforming into wolves. And then, Jody, we get this shot of them completely transformed into wolves. But it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like it's ridiculous. I've used the word cartoon to describe ridiculous movies before. It's cartoon. It's animated. Yeah.
Animated wolves.
It's almost offensive in what it's trying to get you to believe is happening on screen. I did not like that one little bit. But yeah.
And then Dee Wallace's report. They work with her. They do the reporting.
she's
they get the information for her to report.
I think she's like the investigative journalist.
Yeah, they're a couple. They're watching the Wolfman because they're starting to kind of piece all these things together. Like Eddie, the person who the police shot, his body's missing. They go to his apartment. Yeah, he's got all this Wolfman. Werewolf
drawings and stuff.
Yeah, one of those really psycho people who pin shit on the walls and then draw yarn all over it.
It's the kind of place where you walk into the apartment and you're like, oh, this is a problem.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. So they're starting to put it together hey, werewolf stuff is happening. So they're watching the Wolfman, which is really cute.
Mm-hmm.
And then she calls and is like, something's wrong with my husband and I'm scared. I'm kind of all alone. And so they're driving up north or wherever to go and help her.
Mm-hmm. And, she ends up getting up there. I think her husband or her boyfriend or whatever is somewhere else. I don't remember if he stayed behind. I think he did because she goes and says him. But she is looking through the files to see...
Yeah, she breaks into the doctor's office.
Right, the head doctor. And she's like on the phone with someone, either Dee Wallace or her husband. And I think it's her husband because he's like, look through the file cabinet, see if you can find anything about this Eddie character. Yeah. His name is Quist.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, I'll look for cues for Quist. And she finds out that there's
Marsha Quist.
Yeah, there's a lot of Quists.
TJ Quist.
Yeah.
all these characters we met.
Right.
That are the weird people near the cabin.
Absolutely. And as she's reading them and saying this on the phone, this hand reaches out. It's a wolf hand. It's furry. Grabs the file from her.
It's like, thank you.
Thanks for grabbing this for me.
It's this huge, monstrous werewolf.
It's the werewolf,
enormous and very scary.
Yeah, this one has almost like a V shape to its head, and it comes out to these big ears.
It's like Wile E. Coyote, the wolf.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. Big. Chokes her out.
Right. Kills her.
Basically kills her.
I love the design of the wolves in this movie.
They're all right.
Yeah? Okay.
I don't know. I've never been like, oh yeah, that's a really good werewolf. Besides the Wolfman, because I guess I'm just concentrated on it should still look like a man.
Okay. Yeah.
And these are pretty much just
wolves. Yeah, big wolves.
Yeah.
Dee Wallace finds the body and is freaking out. She kind of goes on this final girl circuit where she's running around and seeing all these dead people and everything. And she ends up in this cabin with all the other, whatever they're called, patients, I guess.
Yeah, the Quists.
The Quists, yeah. And this is where it's revealed that they're all
werewolves.
This. Yeah.
And they all start changing. The husband of the other lady who got killed gets there. He had gotten some silver bullets from Dick Miller.
Dick Miller's in the movie. They set off these silver bullets so obviously. They're somebody dropped off these silver bullets and didn't want them because he also owns an antique shop. It's they're just sitting here. I guess I got to figure out some way to sell them, but I don't know.
He buys them.
Anyway, let's move on.
Heads up north.
Yep.
Comes in to save the day. Starts shooting these werewolves.
Which, you would do. Even though this raises a lot of ethical questions, because these are people, and they're monstrous, but they're dudes, and you're just killing them. There's got to be legal stuff there.
I wouldn't even know where to begin.
No, it's a conundrum to be sure.
Yeah, so it's this big cat and mouse game.
Yep.
They get away, and they think they've killed all the werewolves.
Right.
But there could be more.
The husband, who's basically just become one of... in Christopher Stone, Dee Wallace's husband, has basically just kind of become one of them at this point. But he ends up somehow coincidentally falling into the back seat of the car, and they're like driving home with him. I don't remember how this resolves. I think the movie...
They shot him.
Yeah, they shot him, but he's alive.
No, he's not alive.
Okay,
he's dead.
All right, yeah.
So she gets back to work. It's her first night back on television.
That's how it ends. Yes.
And she's, her and her
the
journalist who's working with her. He's like, you're sure you want to report about these werewolves? And she's like, we have to warn people that they're out there.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know if anybody's going to believe you. And she's like, I think they will.
I got an idea.
So, the prompter comes up like she's supposed to read the regular news and whatever. And she goes into this big monologue about monsters within and, they're right next door and all this other stuff. And she like looks down and then she looks back up and she's become a werewolf.
Yeah, she changes on live TV in front of everybody. Yeah. And then the husband of her friend, shoots her.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And then it's done.
And yeah, that's the end of the movie.
And that's the end of the movie.
That's I'm into what they're doing, like the reveal on live TV, but like shooting her seems like a weird wrinkle. Maybe she was just like, I don't want to live as a werewolf.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
But it was just a very strange little stinger at the end of the movie. But yeah, again, very abrupt ending, but this one kind of makes the most sense in terms of just like ending, because she
At least
dies
it had
and...
like
Right. Yeah.
A quieter ending.
Right. So that's what we have.
So that was the first one of 1981, The Howling.
Yep. And at the same year, later on that year,
came American Werewolf in London.
Classic horror movie.
Yeah.
This is like one of this and The Wolfman are the only two that are like this. These are the classic cinema movies.
I really liked this movie.
I'm
very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it was written and directed by John Landis, who's Max Landis' father, and he sucks. John Landis is cool, I think, but his son is a problem. But anyway, ignoring all that, John Landis, he does a really good job. I really like the way that this movie is both written and directed. There's a lot of really interesting shots. The writing just feels very natural. It feels very relatable. That's the thing that I was...
Yes, it's a full story instead of just like jumping in and not knowing what's going on and all this other stuff. It's about these two boys, Jack,
David,
who are American. They've flown over to London and they're going to be backpacking throughout the countryside.
This was a fun movie to make fun of the accents for, which we like to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They stumble across this town.
Yeah, it's this tiny little village.
That's like the
I can't remember the name of it, but there's the tavern. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm trying to...
Yeah, the slaughtered lamb is what it's called. Yeah,
the slaughtered lamb. They go in there, there's a pentagram on the wall, and Jack asks, like, oh, what's that pentagram? And everybody in the bar's like, well, like...
We don't talk about that pentagram?
Yeah, we don't talk about that. And they won't give him an answer, and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna go.
Right.
And they're like, okay, well, beware the moon and stay on the road.
Yeah. Which they don't do.
Like, okay. And
they
so
don't.
They start walking away. The bartender at the slaughtered lamb or whatever and is like, you have to go save them. They're going to get eaten. And all the men are like, no, we're not going to help them.
Yeah. They go out. Again, this is very well directed. They're on this like open field and they're like, oh man, I'm hearing these wolf howling sounds. I don't like this. Well, all right. Well, don't panic. Let's go back
but they don't know what it is.
Right. They can't see it.
It could be like a mountain lion. It could be, it just sounds feral.
Right. Yeah. Eventually they do see it, but we don't because the camera is like on their faces and they're looking into the camera and they're like, all right, that thing is a wolf and it's going to be a problem. We have to run. And so they start running. Eventually the thing catches up with them and it catches up with Jack first and he gets eviscerated.
Oh, slaughtered.
And David at first is... Yeah.
Filleted.
Yeah. David at first is running away.
Yeah. I hate to laugh.
I know. Yeah.
It's probably what I would do too. It's just like run and then all of a sudden he just like stops and he's like, Jack! And like switches directions and starts running back again.
It's like panic mode. You try to get away and
by the time he gets back there, Jack is ripped from the inside out. Like just completely barren to the world.
He's disgusting.
And he stops and he's like, Jack! And then all of a sudden this big old wolf jumps on him and starts attacking him.
Attacks him, and then that's when the people from the tavern do show up and they
shoot the wolf.
They shoot the wolf, which turns back into a dude.
Human.
Yep. So David gets knocked out.
Right. He doesn't he probably doesn't remember the thing being shot.
Right.
And then turning back into a human.
Yeah.
He wakes up in a hospital bed in London. Mm-hmm. They tell him Jack's dead. Yeah. They've sent his body back to New York to be buried, you know, and all that. And we're keeping you here. It was a lunatic that found you and slaughtered your friend and tried to kill you. And he's like, no, it wasn't.
It was definitely a wolf. And they were like, there was no wolf and there was a dude. So it was the dude. It was
definitely him. He's like, look at me. I'm covered in bite marks and scratches. There's no way a human could do this. And the guy's like, well, a lunatic has the strength of 10 men.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like, oh, okay. I didn't know that. Right. But
yeah, so there's also, most notably, there's this nurse who, by the way, her name is Alex.
Yes, Nurse Alex.
Nurse Alex, which I think is funny. And the two of them start to take a liking to each other. I love knowing a lot about movies because, like, as soon as she turns around and is this beautiful nurse, immediately you're like, all right, love interest. Like, even if you don't know anything about this movie, like, you know that they're going to smooch at one point.
He gets released from the hospital, but not before getting visited by Jack Attack.
Who's
been attacked and looks like it.
Yeah, he's a ghost, but he's also it could be kind of implied that it's like a figment of his imagination, but I think he's
truly being visited.
Yeah, he's like from the afterlife.
Yeah, he looks like he's still been attacked, but he's there, he's talking to David, and David's like, Jack, what's happening? And he's like, well, I'm dead.
Right. The rules are that because he was killed by quote-unquote unnatural means, he is forced to walk the earth in limbo until the werewolf curse is lifted. And the curse is basically the last werewolf has to be killed. And apparently that lunatic was the last werewolf, gave the thing to David, so now he's the last werewolf. So in order to save Jack's soul, David has to die.
And so Jack is like, I really need you to kill yourself.
Yeah. Just
do that for me.
Do me
just
a solid.
Kill yourself. And of course, David is like, I can't kill myself, and you're not real.
Right, and I'm not a werewolf. That's ridiculous. He doesn't believe him.
So he then gets checked out of the hospital. Nurse Alex is like, you can stay with me.
Yeah, which obviously she has intentions here because this isn't the kind of thing you say to somebody that you're attracted to and without ulterior motives. But.
Right. So they get together.
They do.
I would think eventually he'd be, like, getting ready to go home.
Yeah, I don't know what his plan is
I just
anymore.
don't think he's healed enough to actually, like, leave.
Sure. Plus, I think at a certain point, like, why not, like, you're just a London native now. Like, you just live in London now.
So it's been a month. Mm-hmm. The next full moon is coming.
Yep.
He gets visited by David again, like the day before the full moon or whatever. He's more decayed.
I love this. I love that he gets worse over time.
Mm-hmm. He's like green with just festering flesh and all that.
Yeah, it's gross.
Stuff. And he's like, I really need you to kill yourself before you hurt someone else, too.
Yeah, and he's refusing. He's refusing to listen. Alex wakes up because it's happening at night, and then comes in, can't see Jack. He's like gone at this point. And yeah, so he's clearly going through something. I think he does tell Alex that he's seen Jack and that.
Oh yeah, she thinks it's just like all stress related.
Right, and he thinks that too. But he tells her that he thinks he might be a werewolf and just isn't.
She's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to work.
Right.
You stay here.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get the just most iconic transformation scene ever.
There's a meme, a gif of this guy sitting in the chair reading, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh god, no, and like falls to the ground.
You can tell it's painful. He's like sweating. Yes. He's screaming.
This is like the worst. We talked about like Return of the Living Dead, how awful it would be to like turn into a zombie like this.
But this
is similar, where it just seems like a nightmare to go through.
He's screaming, his limbs are stretching, his hands are stretching.
There's all this cracking sounds.
Yeah, this hair is just sprouting out from everywhere. His fangs are growing, his face is elongating. Ugh. Like you see all of it. It does not take as long as it fucking does in the Howling when we watch one of those werewolves.
Seriously.
That seriously took like 10 minutes for that transformation, and it doesn't even look that good.
I think
it does not look that good.
Okay.
It does not.
I think
it does not.
Okay. Yeah, but he's changing, and then it like cuts away.
to this other couple who's just outside and is like, oh, let's go sneak up on our friend and give him a good...
No. Oh, let's go sneak up on our friend and give him a good scare. We're having a laugh.
Yeah, basically.
We're taking the piss.
And they get attacked by a werewolf.
They do. A werewolf. We don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
We do know where it came from. It's David.
He wakes up the next day in the zoo.
Yeah, he wakes
up
with
the wolves.
And he's just laying there and he's nude.
Yeah.
And he's just like, all right, good dog. He's trying to back up. He gets out. He has to get home. There's this really problematic scene where he's in a bush and he's talking to this kid and being like, hey kid, come here. I want your balloons.
Kid has 5 balloons in his hand.
And this naked American man is hiding in this bush telling this kid to come over here. I don't like the looks of this, but it's played for laughs.
He just steals his balloons. Why you would pick that?
Balloons of all things.
And he's hiding behind them. He swipes a lady's coat and puts that on as well. Gets back to Alex's apartment.
Right. And there's I think the doctor from the hospital is also kind of piecing things together because
he went and visited the town and nobody's saying anything. And he sees the pentagram on the wall and they're still very quiet about it.
The last night there were all these werewolf attacks and he's like, well, maybe what's his name has something to do with this. So he calls, he asks Nurse Alex, what's going on with David? And he's like, oh, he's back at my place. So we should go check on him or whatever. I think this was that night, and they call him, and he's not answering because he's not there.
Right.
So he is putting pieces together, yeah.
So another day goes by, and Jack visits him, and we go to another sex place.
Yeah, they go another
cinema
theater, a porn theater, which these are so weird to me. I can't imagine this. Weird.
So they're sitting at the back of this theater, and Jack doesn't even have lips anymore. He's so decayed, and he's like, "Well, I'd like to introduce you to the 6 victims that you killed."
Right. And some of them are being nice, the couple is just hello.
Yeah.
But the others are like, you killed me.
Yeah, they're all trying to discuss how David should kill himself. Like, oh, you should hang yourself. No, if that goes badly, you'll just choke to death. Or, oh, buy a gun.
Yeah.
All this other stuff. He eventually does another transformation in the theater. I think he slaughters 3 more people.
Yeah, he kills a lot of people.
But now Alex and the doctor and the police are all running after him, and they basically corner him. Nurse Alex runs up and is like, David, what are you doing? And then, she's also like, I love you, because, apparently that's going to change him. He, as a werewolf, looks up at her and, goes and lunges at her, and that's when the cops shoot him.
Shoot him, yeah. And then she lets out a cry. She's sad, and then you see his body there. He changes back human, and then again, bam,
boom,
credits.
Movie's over.
This one, this is the most abrupt of all the endings because it's so quick after the action, but I like it in terms of how bold it is because it's just boom, that's it. That's the end of the movie.
We forgot to mention one seriously iconic character in this movie, and that's Frank Oz.
Frank Oz is in the movie. I don't know why this happens.
He is the American
doctor. Or psychologist, maybe?
He's just the correspondence between...
Oh, an embassy.
Telling that... Yeah, exactly. Through the embassy, telling David's parents, hey, this is what happened. He's still in London. This is the treatment that he's getting. I can only approve that because I'm part of the American embassy and all this other stuff. It's just a cute moment because it's just hello. And you're
hi.
Oh, hi, Frank.
Hi, Frank Oz. What are you doing in this movie? At some point, someone's watching The Muppets, so I think maybe they wanted that scene and only could get it if Frank Oz
Who knows?
Who knows?
It's just so funny.
Yeah, it's very weird. Hey, but I liked this movie a lot. I thought it was really good.
This movie has an amazing soundtrack with it.
Oh, it does. Every song in this is a banger. It's all...
Excuse me.
A banger.
A banger.
Yeah.
Like a headbanger.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's all
first
moon.
of all, we have 3 Blue Moon renditions.
Yes.
Not just one, we have 3.
Right.
Then we have Moon Dance.
Moon Dance.
But we do not have...
Werewolves of London?
Yeah.
That song. The main werewolf
song. Because we looked it up. That song came out in 74.
Right, so before this movie.
So why do we not have...
Yeah.
That song. We also have Bad Moon Rising.
Right, there's a lot of really, really good songs with moon in it. This one is the quintessential song about werewolves, and it's not in the movie, about being in London and there being werewolves. Maybe that was a deliberate choice because that would be too cliche or whatever.
I guess, but it would have fit. I was looking for it.
And it's a good song, so I wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
I had to listen to it on YouTube. What is this? Anyway,
garbage.
What is it? Yeah. So that was 81. We're out of 81 now.
Yep. I mean, not too many years in the years later, we get
2 movies.
Yep. Stephen King's Silver Bullet.
Stephen King's Silver Bullet. That was hard to say.
This came out in 85.
It's a good one. It's based on a novel by Stephen King, so novelette. So it's going to be at least interesting. I liked this movie.
So it's going to at least interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, I like to do. You know who's in this movie?
Who's in this movie? Tell me.
We have Corey Haim.
Yes, he's in back. This movie. He
This
knew...
is pre-Lost Boys.
Right, he knew he was going to be in a vampire movie later, so he's like, I got to cover the werewolf base first.
He plays Marty.
Yeah.
A little kid in the town.
Yeah.
He's quote-unquote crippled.
He's in a wheelchair.
Paralyzed from the waist down.
He's not just in a wheelchair, he's in a gas-powered electric wheelchair.
Yeah, built by his uncle.
Right, Uncle Red, who's played by...
Gary Busey. Ginger Dead Man himself. This is pre-Ginger Dead Man, but not just off-the-wall bonkers Gary Busey. Oh my gosh. We laughed in every single one of his scenes because you get this feeling that the director wanted something specific, and Gary was just like, all right, I'll try to do that.
Yeah. You get the impression that he glanced at the script, found out what it was
kind of about,
and where the scene was going, and it's like, we'll get there. You get the impression he's not actually doing any lines in this movie. But yeah, he plays this uncle who's alcoholic. Marty's mother doesn't want him around because he's a bad influence. He is a bad influence.
Yeah. He built his old gas-powered wheelchair for Marty, but now he's made this updated Silver Bullet, dirt bike.
Yeah, it's like a motorcycle, but instead of a traditional bicycle seat in the middle, it's a wheelchair seat. And yeah, it goes faster than cars do. It goes, assuming these cars are going 45 miles per hour, it can go faster than that.
Right. So Marty and his sister Jane.
Mm-hmm. I like their relationship
I do
a lot.
Too. It adds a lot to this story.
They start out kind of antagonistic towards each other, but they're both good people, so they're both I'm sorry that,
Yeah. So all these murders start happening in the town.
Yeah.
And first it's just this guy who works at the sawmill, and it could have been explained that maybe he got ran over by a train or something like that.
He was laying by the train track, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's Marty's kind of little girlfriend's dad, he gets slaughtered.
Right.
And so now the town's kind of starting to worry. They're looking for guidance from the reverend at the Catholic Church, and he's trying to give comfort.
Yes, in yet another Twin Peaks reference, not a reference, but the reverend is played by Big Ed Hurley from Twin Peaks. So he's trying to keep things together. There's also the town sheriff, who's played by John Locke from Lost. It's all connected, Jody.
Yeah,
it's all connected.
All connected.
So they're trying to keep the town kind of sane, but the town is obviously very rabbled up.
And they get even more rabbled when Marty's best friend, Brady, dies.
Right, a little kid.
Who just gets eviscerated and torn apart.
Mm-hmm. His father kind of is one of the people...
Is going to lead this brigade to find this lunatic or this monster that's killed everybody.
Right.
They think it's a person.
Yeah, they think it's a person, but even if it is a thing, they're like, we're going to go out and get it. And so they form this lynch mob, essentially. It's Halloween 4 inspired, just brigade of vigilantes.
There's a really good scene where 4 people die in it, and it's because they're walking through the woods, and the fog is so thick waist down.
Yeah, it's doesn't rise up. You can tell there's dry ice to a T, but it's just below their waists.
And then they hear the sounds of the monster or the werewolf or whatever, and it's like the long grass scene in Lost World from Jurassic Park.
I really wished that you would see a furry tail come flying up from the fog.
Yeah, you just see this arm come up and take this person, take that person, takes this guy who has a bat that says Peacemaker on it, which
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and kills that person too.
Yep. So this was not a success, I would say, in terms of
the town is now completely on lockdown. Nobody can go out past 6:00. Everything is canceled.
What would that be like if you couldn't go outside and it was
couldn't
dangerous?
do anything. The fireworks get canceled. Marty's devastated. His best friend died. His girlfriend's dad died, and she had to move
away.
So he's just like so upset. Gary Busey.
He's trying to make him feel better.
Right,
so he
buys him some firecrackers and is like getting ready to leave. He's like, okay, well, be careful with the new bike.
Right.
That's like a friggin'
it's this
motorcycle.
And he doesn't wear a helmet when he's wearing it.
They didn't have helmets in 85.
They hadn't invented them yet. Okay. So Marty goes out one night. He sneaks out of his house, and he goes to this bridge to light off the fireworks, and he's having such a good time. He's lighting them, and he's going, ha, yay, and clapping like he's a 5-year-old kid.
Like the cops won't come and find him.
Yeah, like you wouldn't be heard and noticed lighting off fireworks. Like someone's gonna see that and be like, who's lighting off fireworks? Do they have a permit? He doesn't. But he's not found by the police. He's instead found by
a werewolf.
The werewolf, yeah. So he gets attacked. He ends up lighting one of his firework things and aiming it right at the thing. Hits him right in the eye. Right
at the werewolf.
Yep.
Yeah, hits him right in the eye. So then he has to tell Janie what's going on.
Yeah, he goes home.
And she's like, okay, if that's real, then like whoever turns, and it's a werewolf, they have to turn back into a human during the day. So I'm just going to go around town and see who's missing an eye.
This is classic Stephen King. I imagine this works a lot better in the book.
In the book, yeah, the story. It's not a book.
Yeah. Where she's like going around kind of trying to get like canned food donations, but she's looking at people to see who's missing an eye.
Right. She's gone throughout the whole town. Nobody has it. She's returning its pop cans she's returning back to the church.
Which apparently that's what runs it.
Right. And the father is out there gardening and all this other stuff. And Janie doesn't see it, but we as an audience member see that he has this patch over his eye.
He's the one who's missing an eye.
So he kind of is like, she's dropping the pop cans off, and he goes in there and is like, are you okay? And blah, 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 blah. And she sees that he, has an eye patch on.
She's wigging out, man.
Like runs away and all this other stuff. So now the Reverend is like, okay, well, Marty knows that it's me.
Right, because Marty is the one who hit him in the eye, and now she's the one who was freaking out when she saw that he was missing an eye. Their brother or sister, he puts two and two together
so
that they're onto him.
Marty has to die.
Yep,
There's this
Marty has to die.
Big car chase scene.
Yeah.
Where Marty's in his new silver bullet, and the Reverend's in his car and swerving all around, trying to hit him, trying to throw him off this bridge and all this other stuff. Doesn't get away with it. There's a farmer that's, comes in and is like, oh, what's wrong, Marty? Out of gas and all this other stuff. Gets away.
Yeah, he's able to escape.
They've called Uncle Red.
Right.
Janie and Marty have.
Yeah, and he's very hesitant to believe them because obviously.
Because he's an adult.
Right. Yeah, and they're trying to convince him and everything. They are, just trying to get somebody on their side because they're kids. What are they going to do? And eventually it gets to the point where, in a huge coincidence, they are left with Red during the next full moon, which is also on Halloween. So like a lot of these things
just works out just right, which I believe there's a full moon this Halloween.
Oh, that's it's just what we need.
So just like be aware of that.
Yeah, just everybody be on the lookout. Yeah, and they know that the wolf, the Reverend, is going to be coming after them because Marty knows and also hurt him.
Uncle Red gets a silver bullet made from like Marty's medallion and Janie's crucifix that she has that's made out of silver. They get one silver bullet made, one.
Yeah, well,
I hope you have a good shot.
It does seem like it'd be easier to get access to silver bullets, but at the same time, I don't know how. Like, I don't know anything about guns or anything, so I don't know how you would. But yeah, they're able to make one silver bullet, and they're like, "This is it. This is the one thing."
Yeah, so they've stayed up till 3:00 in the morning, and they're like, "Oh, he's not coming!" And all of a sudden, boom! He like,
hell yeah,
like Kool-Aid Man's through the door.
He's like, "Oh yeah!"
Yeah, and starts attacking Uncle Red, which is really funny to watch Gary Busey being thrown around like a rag doll.
Right. He's fun in this movie.
Marty, they somehow the gun gets unloaded. Marty tries to grab the silver bullet, and Janie has to get the gun, and eventually, boom! They do shoot the Reverend right in the face, right in his other eye.
Right in his other eye, which again, very Stephen King to like have that poetic little stinger where it's his other eye that gets shot out. Yeah, and that's again the end of the movie. The whole thing is kind of narrated by
Janie.
By Janie, which you don't really see a lot of female narrators, which is cool.
Especially in Stephen King shit.
Yeah, but also why does this movie need a narrator? It doesn't really...
I think it just tries to pair back to the style that he writes in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it does have a very, like, nostalgic feel to it. So, that's really Silver Bullet. Not really much to say on it. It's a good movie.
Story.
Yeah. Good characters.
Corey Haim is always so cute to watch.
Yeah. This was, like
mouth
you said,
is not
Lost
open
Boys.
as much in this movie, but definitely times when I was like, close your fucking
Close
mouth.
the mouth. Catching flies. Corey, what are you doing?
But he's such a cute little kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, really good movie. The last movie that we will touch on and we just watched to like get in the mood was same year, 1985.
Teen Wolf.
One cannot talk about werewolves without talking about Teen Wolf.
Yeah. This movie is important because it's the other movie had Marty in it, and this movie had Marty McFly in it. So there you go.
the same year that Back to the Future came out.
Back to the Future,
Teen
85,
Wolf
Teen Wolf, 85. Yeah. It's got Michael J. Fox as the main character. He is a high school student. Yeah. This movie is a classic, by the way.
Oh, it's... you had never seen it.
No, I had never seen it.
I had seen it a couple of times, and I've always... It's not as good as Back to the Future. It will, and nothing ever really will be. You always want it to be because it has Michael J. Fox in it.
Yeah.
But this movie's still very entertaining.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was.
Yeah, it's about I always want to say Marty. Michael J. Fox's character.
Yeah.
And he's kind of starting to go through puberty is basically what it is.
Right. It's that's the allegory in this movie, is that his body's going through these changes. He's developing hair in weird places, but it's super long hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so essentially this whole movie is him as this loser who's not able to... He's not popular. He's on the basketball team.
But the basketball team sucks.
Right, and everybody's making fun of him and everything. He's got this friend, Styles, who... This is the kind of person that I want to be.
No.
Because he's a nerd and he's a dork, but he's also
everybody
popular.
likes him.
Yeah, and he's like a party dude, kind of, but not really.
Yeah, he like hosts the terrible games that you play at a party.
Right, like Spin the Bottle and like 7 Minutes in Heaven, like these terrible games. But
he also has this friend, Boof.
Yes, his lady friend, whose name is Boof, and nobody at any point mentions...
like, haha, your name's Boof.
Right, and I'm just like, her name's Boof. Why is this not what the movie is about? That her name's Boof.
But that's just like has been his longtime friend. That's his best friend. He doesn't really think of her that way.
No,
he's in love with this other... I think her name's Pamela.
Something like that. I choose to think that her name's Jennifer just because of Back to the Future,
But she's just this popular hoity-toity girl that doesn't give him a second look.
Right.
So then it's like the night after this big party.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the bathroom and he's just like, what's happening to me? And his dad's like, are you okay?
Knocking on the door. I hate scenes like this in movies where somebody's in the bathroom and other people are trying to get them to explain what's going on.
I hate that too.
As if like they're not in the bathroom and could just be in the bathroom and like leave me alone. But yeah, he's knocking on the door eventually.
Yeah, his fingernails start growing, his hair's growing, his teeth are growing, and he just boom, like turns into this basically like man wolf.
Yeah, it's very much like the Wolfman, where he's a human with a lot of hair and wolf features.
And he and his dad's like, whatever it is, son, you can tell me. And he like opens the door. And his dad's a werewolf. His dad's a werewolf too.
This was the greatest moment in any movie I've ever seen. I was laughing so hard because I truly was not expecting that. Like,
he kept asking questions like, oh, does he just, like, presume that he is a werewolf? Or, like, do we get to see him get bit? And I was just, like, laughing to myself.
Yeah, I was like, is the conceit of this movie that he was already bitten and, doesn't remember? Like, what's the story here? And then when his dad opens the door and is a werewolf, I was like, all right, I've never loved anything more than this. It's so funny, because he looks ridiculous, too.
Yeah. So, he basically... can't control when he turns into a werewolf and when he doesn't. It doesn't have to be on a full moon.
Right, it's whenever. And
it's kind of like, it's like when he gets excited, basically, is when that happens. He goes through this basketball game and turns into a werewolf in the middle of it. And the whole school's like, what?
Whoa.
And then they get over it super quickly because he's really good at basketball. And it's like, oh, cool.
And he becomes super popular.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox is really awesome.
Yeah, but they call him Michael J. Fox, which is weird.
I can't remember his name.
I know.
I always want to say Marty, and I know that's not it, but...
So yeah, he's got all this newfound popularity. This girl that he likes is finally interested in him, but Boof is all like, I liked you before, and you're not behaving like yourself. So she's sad. And, like... Yeah, it's a very classic story about like finding something, just being yourself, right? And finding something that isn't you, but it makes people like you. And then like, which do you kind of go with? Which I think the werewolf idea is very compelling for this narrative because that's also very duality and very like two different sides of you.
Yeah. Good movie. Everyone should definitely see Teen Wolf. Mm-hmm. There's also the MTV show Teen Wolf that was on. Yeah. I watched a couple of seasons of that. I love that show too.
Is that a comedy? I never thought...
it's a drama.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I was confused because the movie is a comedy.
It's got the kid who's in the Maze Runner movies.
Oh, yeah.
That's Styles.
Really?
In the Teen Wolf series.
Okay.
He's my favorite. He's great.
All right.
He makes that show really what it is.
I will say, 2 out of the movies that we watched used the slur for gay people, the F word.
Oh, you're right.
Teen Wolf uses it, and I believe...
American Werewolf in London.
Yes, yeah. I didn't know if that's exactly what he was saying, but he's like trying to insult British people, and he's like, the Queen's a bitch, and, Prince Charles is
the... Yeah. That one word.
That word. So I don't love that. None of the vampires movies had the F word in it, but...
Right. They just had
other stuff which aren't good. So worth noting, but we don't have to dwell on it.
Right.
Those are okay, so there are a lot of other like movies that we aren't going to get into, but
a ton.
There's been a lot of werewolf movies. Most of them are like
There's apparently these ones called like Ginger Snaps.
Yeah, Ginger Snap.
It's basically almost like the female version
of Teen Wolf, kind of.
Teen Wolf, but darker.
Yeah, it uses like puberty and werewolfism as mutually.
Yeah, there's a ton of werewolf movies. We didn't watch all of them
obviously
because they're basically all the same.
Yeah, lots of them are similar. There's a movie called Wolf with Jack Nicholson, which also it deals a lot in like business and especially in the 80s, like just kind of the working class people and how being like a wolf is kind of parallels that idea about cutthroat business and stuff, which we didn't watch. It looks kind of like boring and like a sleepy, just kind of slow movie.
Right.
But the movies we did watch, really liked for the most part.
So werewolves, basically, they, like I said, they deal with the beast within.
Absolutely.
All of us.
Yep.
And most of the movies you view the werewolf as a victim because they've fallen curse to being a werewolf.
Vampires are a lot of like that weird thing out there is scary, like the vampire is scary, whereas in werewolves that is the main character is
you always look at the werewolf.
Right.
Werewolves can, like we said, schizophrenia is also a metaphor for that. For the Wolfman, the guy who wrote it, Kurt Siodmak, I believe. He had fled Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And it's apparent, like we said, the Wolfman really wrote all the rules for werewolfism. And that, of course, the people that are going to die next are marked with a pentagram or a star.
Yeah.
Which is, speaking so much about...
Nazi Germany.
Right, about those times. So those are just...
very interesting
the
stuff.
history within.
Yeah.
But let's dive into what makes werewolves scary.
What makes it scary? It's the name of the show. You know it, you love it. So I have been struggling with how to frame this.
Okay.
Because, again, there's a lot of similarities between vampires and this. There's a lot of stuff about you could be turned into something that is beastly, but... there's a lot more primal fear when it comes to werewolves because a vampire is this weird, creepy thing. Like we mentioned, it's coming for you. It's going to get in and get out, and it's going to be this weird...
and it's still humanoid.
Yeah, it's still humanoid. Whereas if a vampire is like Freddy Krueger, then a werewolf is like Jason Voorhees.
Absolutely.
It's this big, hulking beast that's just going to eviscerate you, and you can't stop it. Couple that with the fact that it could be you that's doing that to your loved ones, which is a common theme in these movies. It just lends to fear. The idea of this duality is so important to the werewolf thing. There's civilization, and then there's the outside nature. There's the beast. There's the classic person who can like stand up and think for himself, and then there's just this rage monster that could just eviscerate people. There's a lot of stuff about werewolves kind of as a metaphor for addiction, because it's something that you're struggling to fight against, but it just keeps coming back and hurting you and the people you love.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. It's something that you let in, much like vampires, but like giving into your desires. We see this in the Howling with the husband who like goes and sleeps with that other
Marsha,
woman
yeah.
when he was avoiding doing that before he became a werewolf. It's like you could try to suppress these things, which is a very human idea to like fight against your urges. And then the werewolf is about your urges just come out and you can't control them. And so it's very scary to think that like one day you're just going to let go and destroy and mess up your life in this way. And yeah, I think there's not really much to say there just because...
I think there's this underlying pull towards what makes it scary to men is that women or men have always subconsciously, I believe, feared women.
Okay.
I remember the gods.
Right.
And we get our names of the week from the Norse gods.
Right.
And Friday is named after
Freya.
And like, Friday the 13th is bad because it's, Freya's day and women are fucking evil and all this other stuff.
13 was a number associated with women too.
Right. And so, that paired with moon cycles, which paired with like women's cycles all that stuff, it all gets paired. Like those are things that are just so ingrained in our culture that we forget that that's why we're scared of them.
Yeah, I think there's...
I mean, women are scared of it too because let's face it, we do go crazy once a month.
I was gonna say I'm weird. It's weird that there aren't more female werewolves because of the symbology of like
men made most of these movies, so they won't put men in them.
I mean, that's why you wouldn't expect a woman to make a movie where hey, once a month this woman turns into a beast.
It's just too on the nose.
Yeah, but men might make that movie. So I don't know. It just seems weird. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff like that too.
That's what I pair along with it to what makes it super scary for people.
Right. I think there might be an interesting analogy to make about werewolves are scary to men and vampires are scary to women because vampires are very like invasive and like penetrative, whereas werewolves are like beastly and primal and talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe. I'm not a psychologist by any means.
Right.
But that's, I believe, a lot of what makes werewolves scary.
I believe so, too.
Great.
Well, now that we're done with werewolves and we've gone into full force October and the nights are getting cooler and summer is definitely over.
For sure. It's cold now.
And I'm almost starting to miss it already. I know you love summer.
Oh, yeah. I do love summer.
I think we should take a look back. Next week, we are going to be talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, the franchise.
Great. What I did last summer, I've already forgotten. So it'd be interesting to...
We did nothing.
Oh,
we did absolutely nothing last summer because the world is shut down.
Oh, no.
So you didn't really miss much.
Well, on that note...
If you would like to tweet us your favorite werewolf movie that maybe we didn't watch and we're missing out.
Right, I would love to hear more.
You can tweet at me personally at CleverGirl, the letter F and the letter X.
If you want to tweet at me, you can do so at Mr. spelled out the long way, Red2342. That's at Mr. Red2342.
All right. If you want to tweet at us what your favorite part of I Know What You Did Last Summer is, you can tweet the show at Makes It Scary.
At Makes It Scary. Yeah, great.
Please share, subscribe.
Yeah. If you
rate the show.
Right. If you like this show and want to see it improve or grow in any way, you can leave a 5-star rating on iTunes and just kind of review it. It takes no time at all. It takes literally less than a minute. It's completely free and it helps us out. And it's a good way of like just showing your affection for the show. Plus, it helps iTunes know this is a real thing and they should promote it more.
Absolutely.
You listening, iTunes?
We're looking at you.
Yeah.
All right, and this has been this week's episode, and we werewolf see you next time.
That's good. All right.
Whatever.